The reason why I'm sitting in the seat here today is because when Jimmy goes on the road, he's got a lot of things to do. Something amazing he just did recently. I don't know if you caught this, guys. Jimmy Dore. I had the opportunity to address the UN Security Council on the anniversary of the attack of the Nord Stream pipeline.
Ooh, how did you celebrate?
I don't know. I had some popcorn and watched the movie. It was the biggest act of industrial sabotage and eco-terrorism in human history and was committed by the United States military. You know, I gotta pause for a second before we play the whole thing. I gotta play its whole thing in entirety. But it's amazing when Jimmy uses these words right here. So he talked about industrial sabotage.
Yeah, the most man-made greenhouse gases ever released in human history.
He made sure he hit that point, eco-terrorism. And that's very, very important. That's why I was very, very proud when Jimmy was hitting this, because the audience that he was hitting it to, they have to understand this. When everybody sits there and goes, well, Joe Biden, at least he's better than Donald Trump on the economy, on the climate and the environment. No, he's not.
Well, hold on. The official narrative, and this is not better, by the way, than we did it, is that they think Ukraine did it.
Yeah.
Are you shitting me?
Yeah.
And then that little asshole just came to lecture me about climate change?
Yeah.
If they caused that? Also, they didn't. It was us.
Yeah. It was. If it's Ukraine, it's us. Ukraine ceased to be, is no longer Ukraine since 2014. When we went in there, we changed government. Ukraine was no longer Ukraine. It was just a proxy of the United States. And we know this because Victoria Nuland, her
they don't have the people that can do that kind of demolition. They just don't. Yeah. That's got real highly specialized.
They don't have the resources.
Yes.
I definitely think that SEALs were involved. But let's listen to his whole speech. It was pretty awesome. Very proud of Jimmy Dore. That's why you see us here, ladies and gentlemen, so he can do those things. And that's why you got to support the show.
It is, because I was happy to see this. But now, like, why is Jimmy the one? Like, there should be like 20 other really important people there. It's like frightening. You know what I mean? That they go like he's the only guy who's going to go there.
It is a little frightening, but I'm happy about it because when you say that, there's other people, other experts that will talk about it.
But where's all these people that should be there?
But you know what? Jimmy's a master communicator, and that's the important thing right now. So I'm glad he did it because he really connected. Let's watch this, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Here's Jimmy Dore speaking for the UN.
Greetings, Mr. President, distinguished members of the council. I'm here to speak today about the attack on the Nord Stream pipeline that took place 1 year ago on September 26, 2022. 4 explosions ruptured the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines that carried natural gas from Russia to Europe. It was the biggest act of industrial sabotage in human history, severing the main artery for energy from Russia to Germany, cheap energy that was critical to maintaining Germany's industrial base. We have heard every cockamamie and ridiculous theory on how this happened. Now, you don't need to be a genius investigative reporter to figure out who is the culprit of the Nord Stream attack. Incredibly, most Western news outlets ignore the fact that the President of the United States, Joe Biden himself, announced on February 9, 2022, that he would, in fact, attack the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, saying, and I quote, "If Russia invades Ukraine, tanks crossing the border again, there will no longer be a Nord Stream 2 pipeline. We will bring an end to it. I promise you, we will be able to do it." Even with that pre-admission of guilt from the President of the United States, most of the Western press remained baffled as to who could have pulled off the greatest act of eco-terrorism in history. Well, luckily, we don't have to rely on my interpretation of President Biden's clear threat to attack the pipelines. We actually have Seymour Hersh, a genius investigative reporter with impeccable reputation and credentials, who reported that in June of 2022, United States Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized summer NATO exercise known as Ball Tops 22 planted the remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. And like all criminals, the perpetrators could not contain their elation over committing the crime. Shortly after the attack, many high-ranking U.S. officials could not help but brag about their achievements and expressed multiple times how they were proud of being able to put an end to the pipelines. Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland said, "I am, and I think the administration is, very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea. The United States Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, called it a tremendous opportunity to once and for all remove the dependence on Russian energy. You have to be a paid liar to not acknowledge the hand of the United States in carrying out these attacks. Not only did President Biden declare he would do this, but high-ranking U.S. officials have said similar things for years. We can look to 2014 when former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice stated that over the long run, you simply want to change the structure of energy dependence. You want to depend more on North American energy platforms, which is what this is really all about. An economic war between the West and Russia in order to fill the pockets of rapacious capitalists who actually pull the strings of the U.S. government and dictate foreign policy. So let's pull back and take a look at the context in which this pipeline bombing occurred, shall we? It's all happening under the guise of defending Ukraine from an unprovoked Russian invasion. But of course, that's only true if you start the story of the Ukraine war somewhere near the end of the story instead of the beginning, which would indict Ukraine, the U.S., and NATO. The U.S. and NATO are to blame, which is why the Western media always leaves the origin of this conflict out of their coverage and leaves most people in the dark with a false version of the cause of the conflict. Most Americans believe that Vladimir Putin woke up one day and decided for no particular reason to invade Ukraine and start a war completely out of the blue. This is what supporters of the Ukraine in this war actually believe, because that's the only narrative they hear from their news media, which is funded by the people who profit off this war, the military-industrial complex, the fossil fuel companies in the West, and of course, Wall Street. To make a crude analogy of the Western media's coverage of the Russian invasion is the following. Let's say Vladimir Putin was standing on a bus stop and there was an old lady standing in the street and a bus was heading straight for her. So Vladimir Putin pushes the old lady out of the way of the oncoming bus and down onto the concrete sidewalk. The Western corporate media would start that story near the end saying, Russian president pushes old lady down onto the concrete.
There you go.
The same goes for the entirety of the Ukraine-Russian war.
There you go.
The Western media starts the story of the war at February 24th, 2022.
That is just the beginning of it. You can see the rest of it. Please, we're going to make a separate clip. I'm sure it's all over the interwebs. You can check it out. But I thought that was a good place to end it, too, as well. And to revisit what we just learned recently from this guy over here, Seymour Hersh. Okay? It's a year of lying about Nord Stream, right?
Listen, anybody flapping their jibs about climate change and greenhouse gas, if you're not bringing this up, the largest emission in all of human history, you shut up forever about the environment.
Kurt,
you obviously don't know anything about it.
Well, let me ask you a question. Has anything changed with those same people when it came to the COVID restrictions and masks and the actual shots that are going on and all that stuff? Have they changed their tune?
Who?
I mean, we have all those people that we know.
Safe, effective boosters?
Exactly. All that stuff.
Have you gotten yours yet? There's a triple-demic coming.
Yes.
And now with this greenhouse gas, you need a mask.
Well, a lot of people thought that the next lockdowns will be climate lockdowns. But let's take a look at this. This is a year of lying about the Nord Stream pipeline. Biden administration has acknowledged neither its responsibility for the pipeline bombing nor the purpose of the sabotage. And this is from September 26, 2023.
I think Biden might be less than a million times better than Trump now. Not to disagree with Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball, but I think like this makes him not a million times better.
Well, I mean, he just took a shot the other day. You know what I'm saying? They showed him with the mask on doing it. Mandy, is it Dr. Cohen talking about now you can get them both at the same time?
I hope it was a shot of that go-go juice they gave Hitler now that they're hanging out with Nazis.
Nobody is changing their tune in the mainstream media. Very few people, but we do have one person, and we'll show that person today. But let's get back to this. Given Russians' vast stores of natural gas and oil, American presidents since John F. Kennedy have been alert to the potential weaponization of these natural resources for political purposes. That view remains dominant among Biden and his hawkish foreign policy advisors, and you know them all. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, and Victoria Nuland, now the acting deputy to Biden, also the one who was on the ground, handing out cookies on the Maidan in 2014 when there was an actual coup and we switched governments from Ukraine to a United States proxy. Sullivan convened a series of high-level national security meetings late in 2021 as Russia was building up its forces along the border of Ukraine with an invasion seen as almost inevitable. Now, let me tell you something. This whole thing, what they were saying right now in this article is that they were doing this or they threatened to do this to try to deter Russia from getting involved in war. Russia only moved its troops to the border to try to deter Ukraine, the Azov battalion, from continuing to strike at a mass rate the people of the Donbass.
The celebrated Azov battalion?
The celebrated Azov battalion. That's why they moved troops to the border, Kurt. They were trying to deter them.
Now with up to 90% less Nazis stamped by the ADL?
Not according to the Canadian Parliament. The group, which included representatives from the CIA, was urged to come up with a proposal for action that could serve as a deterrent to Vladimir Putin. The mission to destroy the pipelines was motivated by the White House's determination to support Ukraine President Volodymyr Green Screen Zelensky. Sullivan's goals seemed clear. The White House policy was to deter Russia from an attack, the official told me. The challenge it gave to the intelligence community was to come up with a way that was powerful enough to do that and to make a strong statement of American capability. So find us a way in which we can scare Vladimir Putin and the Russian Federation from even thinking about attacking. Let him know we'll do something crazy and bonsai-like so that he'll change his ways and take those troops away from the border and not even think about attacking.
How come when we do these shock and awe things, they're not...
There's no shock or awe.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'm going to kill you. Like, they're like, all we do is they get their back. I mean, we know when they needlessly drop that extra bomb on, on Nagasaki to just show Stalin.
I think the first one was needless, but go ahead.
Yeah, but okay. Yeah.
But a second one for no reason.
The second one is to, like, and Stalin's supposed to go, oh my God, they have two of those. I guess I'll never try to get those for myself.
Yeah.
Me, Stalin.
Well, some people will argue, Kurt, that the fact is that our foreign policy apparatus, the CIA or the military-industrial complex, acts so crazy, and that's why we haven't seen any attacks on the homeland itself. They'll point to that. They'll say that.
What about the incel, the far-right incel text? What about that group that was going to disrupt a gay pride parade in Idaho? And thank God.
I'm talking about a foreign combatant. I'm talking about another country won't do anything because they know we're crazy. How many people did you hear back in the days?
China spied on us with a balloon. Of course they'll attack us.
How many people did you hear back in the days?
January 6th.
How many people did you hear back in the day in Iraq when they said somebody had to get hit? Somebody needed to be invaded because what they did about 9/11.
I thought that.
You did think that.
Dude, this is how absolutely detached from any kind of logic.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it well.
There's a lot of people like that,
People were saying things that made sense.
Yeah.
That I was like, shut up. Where we get all this military, we're not going to blow somebody up with a funny hat on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody, and I mean, New York was united on a racial level like I've never seen.
California was united too as well. I mean, I saw somebody
there were no
a couple days later.
All the prisoners got together.
They came together, right? I saw somebody holding an American flag over a passway, and people were honking, going crazy, and going nuts. And when George Bush goes, and those people who attacked those buildings will hear from us soon. And also people who knew better made the case that Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden were friends, that they were going to unite to fight America. Even I can't remember his name. I think it was Richard Mole, who went on Bill Maher's show. Was like, you got to be crazy to think these two entities wouldn't work together against the United States. I'm like, those two entities hate each other. And I realized too that people didn't know what the hell was going on when the president himself didn't know the difference between a Sunni and a Shia.
Yeah, well, there was a number of problems with it looking back. We did execute the greatest president in the history of Iraq.
We did. I now know what I did not know then. The real reason why the Biden administration brought up taking out the Nord Stream pipeline. The official recently explained to me that at the time, Russia was supplying gas and oil throughout the world via a dozen pipelines. But Nord Stream 1 and 2 ran directly from Russia through the Baltic Sea to Germany.
And now Germany, once again, dependent on Russian natural gas.
They went back to it, baby.
It's just way more inconvenient and costs more.
Yeah.
Great job.
Yeah.
World order coming through.
Yep. And here's the thing, too, as well. Like, even before they went back to the Russians to get more energy and more oil now with the natural gas we talked about the other day, there were talks that they were buying and purchasing gas and oil from China that China bought from Russia just at a higher price.
Wait, that doesn't sound like liquid freedom.
The administration put Nord Stream on the table because it was the only one we could access, and it would be totally deniable, the officials said.
Is it
totally
deniable?
deniable? We solved the problem within a few weeks by early January and told the White House. Our assumption was that the president would use the threat against Nord Stream as a deterrent to avoid war. So that's, he was just going to do it. We were helping him out. We came up with a plan because he was going to use it to deter war.
Okay, I'll bet you, though, because I still remember, I came with that senator that retired and wrote a book about how at the beginning, the one guy that was going to vote against the Iraq war, and he was jogging, and somebody from an intelligence agency, he still doesn't know, clued him in that it was all fake. Do you know that? It's really, a couple of years ago, they reported on when his book came out. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry, but I just remember being like, wow. And then he kept it to himself until writing this book 20 years later. But that means somebody in intelligence was trying to do the right thing and get word to somebody. Yeah. What I think is they slowly try to filter these people out more and more. So I can see somebody at the agency, if you're going into somewhere in your career and you want to believe, right? A bunch of people going to a lot of things believe in. And then everybody's got their moment when they realize how shit actually works. Yeah. You know, so imagine people in at 30 or something, and then they go, oh, just everybody has to go through it.
Kurt,
I'm sure they go through it too.
I think they're just humans. There's narcissistic humans, and there's regular, people who aren't. They think for others. They think their job and stuff.
You realize you're not getting ahead if you ever have integrity.
Well, that's the thing.
You ain't getting ahead. There's a glass ceiling.
There's going to be good cops. There's going to be good CIA agents. There's going to be good FBI. I mean, listen.
And they will be found and removed.
Yes, and they will be found, and they will be removed. And some of those people will try to link information to get it to the people who they think can get it out to the public, so that for the better good. But then, once again, if they are fingered or they are found to be opening their mouths, they'll get removed, like you said. It was no surprise to the agency's secret planning group when, on January 27, 2022, the assured and confident Nuland, then Undersecretary of the State for Political Affairs, stridently warned Putin that if he invaded Ukraine, he was clearly, as he clearly was planning to, that one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward. So they threatened that. The line attracted enormous attention.
Wait, and then a kindly stranger followed through on our threats for us?
Yeah.
Because I know we didn't do it. I'm denying it.
Yes. The line attracted enormous attention, but the words preceding the threat did not. The official State Department transcript shows that she preceded her threat by saying that with regard to the pipeline, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies. On July 21st, 2021, Biden told the press corps that since the pipeline was 99% finished, the idea that anything was going to be said or done was going to stop it was not possible. At the time, Republicans led by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas depicted Biden's decision to permit the Russian gas to flow as a generational geopolitical win for Putin and a catastrophe for the United States and its allies.
Wasn't Ted Cruz the one who was talking about liquid freedom? I thought it was him. It was a Republican, I remember. Babbling.
We are surrounded by war hawks. These little G.I. Joe, empire education. I really wish that Lindsey Graham and, Donald Trump now praising, stop make fun of Lindsey Graham. He's my friend. No, he's a war hawk.
Is Trump defending Lindsey Graham?
Trump has recently been defending Lindsey Graham. But 2 weeks after Nuland's statement on February 7, 2022, a joint White House press conference with the visiting Schultz, who's the Prime Minister of Germany, Biden signaled that he had changed his mind and was joining Nuland and other equally hawkish foreign policy aides and talking about stopping the pipeline. What is Schultz going to do? He's a puppet. If Russia invades, that means tanks and troops crossing the border of Ukraine again, he said. There will no longer be a Nord Stream 2. We will bring it to an end. We'll bring an end to it, Asked how we could do it since the pipeline was under Germany's control, he said, we will. I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
I've actually seen people act like it's crazy to think that means that they did
it. He admitted it. He said that.
No, he didn't. Or he didn't admit it. I guess he was breaking another promise.
Schultz asked the same question, said, we're acting together. We are absolutely united, and we will not be taking different steps. We will do the same steps, and they will be very, very hard. They will be very, very hard to Russia, and they should understand. The German leader was considered then and now by some members of the CIA team to be fully aware of the secret planning underway to destroy the pipelines. At the time, the challenge to the intelligence community was to come up with a plan that would be forceful enough to deter Putin from the attack on Ukraine. The official told me, "We did it. We found an extraordinary deterrent because of its economic impact on Russia. And Putin did it despite the threat." Even though he was threatened, because you know why? It wasn't going to be, they knew they can find new customers. It's oil, baby. It's energy. If you control the resources, somebody will want to buy it. You had another customer. He knew the Chinese would help him out.
How did Venezuela not be able to do?
Because here's the problem. Yeah. Venezuela needed their refineries. They don't have the capability without the refineries to take that sludge and turn it into oil, liquor, that they can sell. So they need it. It's kind of like the situation in Cuba right now, where half their sugarcane plants are kind of shut down because they went to the old school way, because they can't have the mechanism of kind of, of the actual factories and the pieces because of the sanctions. So they can't get the proper equipment in to refine it properly. So it's just handicapped. And here's the thing, just like Venezuela and Nicaragua and Cuba in the same boat, it might not be official that you can't do business with them, but if you do business with them, that being another country, the United States is going to punish you for it. So nobody does business with them.
You mean cancel culture?
Yeah, cancel culture for other countries. What I did not know then but was told recently, was that after Biden's extraordinary public threat to blow up Nord Stream 2, with Schultz standing next to him, the CIA planning group was told by the White House that there would be no immediate attack on the two pipelines, but the group should arrange to plant the necessary bombs and be ready to trigger them on demand after the war began.
And then what we think happened is Ukraine came in and did it before we could press the button on the thing.
How about when they said Russia did it? Like they blew up their own pipeline. That was the first, because people were so naive to what was going on that the mainstream media could say stupid shit like that or imply that. Russia did it.
The eco part of this is a great part to hammer, because if you just said the Nord Stream pipeline to almost anybody, including people that probably have Ukraine flags on their Twitter, they don't know what the hell you're talking about, and they will glaze right over talking to you. The eco thing, though, that's unbelievable that you would ever talk about somebody eating a hamburger after they endorsed, I gotta eat bugs now because you guys did.
That's why I'm very happy. You gotta eat bugs.
Listen, there's already bugs in this stuff.
I'm very happy that Jimmy hit that point.
Yeah,
eco-terrorism is something that needs to be said.
Greta Thunberg seems to have forgotten about it when she spoke to the UN,
and she's going to be mad at Donald Trump. It was Biden who caused the greatest eco-terrorism catastrophe of all times, not Donald Trump. Just remember that. It was then that we, the small planning group that was working in Oslo with the Royal Norwegian Navy and special services on the project, understood that the attack on the pipelines was not a deterrent, because as the war went on, we never got the command. After Biden's order to trigger the explosives planted on the pipeline, it took only a short flight with a Norwegian fighter and dropping of an altered off-the-shelf sonar device at the right spot in the Baltic Sea to get it done. So it was there.
Norway's like, hey, come on, man. Don't Norway.
By then, the official told me, we realized the destruction of the two Russian pipelines was not related to the Ukrainian war. Putin was in the process of annexing the 4 Ukrainian outblast he wanted, but was part of a neocon political agenda to keep Schultz and Germany, with winter coming up and the pipeline shut down, from getting cold feet and opening up the shuttered Nord Stream 2. The White House fear was that Putin would get Germany under his thumb, and then he was going to get Poland. Well, Poland's coming around now, but that's what they were worried about. They were worried that Putin could somehow
So you thought you would do terrorism first?
Yes. Well, they were afraid that Putin was going to go to them like, come on, man. You need our oil. You get it at a good price. We have a deal. I think that at the in their mind, the Germany...
out of our disastrous idea?
Yeah. Well, I mean, once again, it's kind of crazy the way everybody goes along with it.
Anyway, so great job all around. Everybody should keep their job forever, and there's no such thing as a deep state, even though none of these people get fired.
Yeah. And like you said, they have a 80% disapproval rate in Congress, but they got a 90%
Congress.
retention rate.
I meant all the people that write these great think tank books about how we need to do something crazy right now.
They get hired by those people in Congress.
Should we wait to do something crazy? We can't afford to wait.
The White House said nothing as the world wondered who committed the sabotage. So the president struck a blow against the economy of Germany and Western Europe, the official told me. He could have done it in June and told Putin, we told you what we would do. The White House silence and denials were, he said, a betrayal of what we were doing. If you're going to do it, if you are going to do it when you would do it when it would have made a difference. Within days of the bombing, officials in Denmark and Sweden announced they would conduct an investigation. I really you didn't know who did it. They reported 2 months later that there had been an explosion and said there would be further inquiries. None has emerged. The German government conducted an inquiry but announced that major parts of its finding would be classified.
Well, I'm sure that's not suspicious in any way,
no.
And not because you're hiding something. And why would you? Of course, remember at 9/11 when they didn't tell you who did it?
Yeah.
Remember they didn't go, hey, it was all these guys from here and Osama bin Laden. They kept it classified, right?
Yep.
They didn't want you to know.
Yeah. And we got to invade Iraq because a bunch of Saudis bombed the World Trade Center. Yeah. There is no evidence that President Biden has required the American intelligence community to conduct a major all-source inquiry into the pipeline bombing. Such requests are known as taskings and are taken seriously inside the government. All of this explains why a routine question I posed a month or so after the bombings to someone with many years in the American intelligence community led me to the truth that no one in America or Germany seems to want to pursue. My question was simple. Who done it? Who did
Stuff happens, okay? There's no reason to go blaming people willy-nilly like they're Russell Brand.
Yeah. The Biden administration blew up the pipelines, but the action had little to do with winning or stopping the war in Ukraine. It resulted from fears in the White House that Germany would waver and turn on the flow of Russian gas, and that Germany and then NATO, for economic reasons, would fall under the sway of Russia and its extensive and inexpensive natural resources, and thus followed the ultimate fear that America would lose its long-standing primacy in Western.
But isn't England still
Europe.
our bitch? I mean, we drag them into everything, and they go along with it, and they're our, that's why we want them in the EU, because they're our boy in the EU.
Well, I mean, there you have it. At the end of the day, I think a lot of people were fearful inside American foreign policy apparatus that Putin would be able to convince Germany to still go along with business, business as usual, and that's why sometimes when I think that this kind of like the fact that they're sending tanks and all these other weaponry, even though they know they still want to do business with Russia, right? They still want to make sure they get that cheap gas.
That's what pieces of absolute shit work in the government. Yeah. And every time I see somebody babbling about how Trump's worse, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Do you absolutely not? Do you just revert to goo goo gaga every time they say a new battle of good versus evil that it turns out is not that?
Well, I think you're kind of underplaying the fact that Putin hates the LGBT community, and that is a big reason why we need to go to war. In Afghanistan, the Taliban, we need to stay there and fight for the women. I mean, come on.
Dude, this made me laugh today thinking about when Putin, the anti-gay law, when they said, and Russia's claim was like, we just don't want them propagandizing children with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, nobody's going to propagandize children. That's what I cut to 2023.
Yeah. Dude, there are gay clubs in Moscow and whatnot. They just don't allow it in their parades and their school and all that stuff.
It's real. They don't have any, story times.
Yeah. Remember the West Wing? Well, they had this like Putin-like candidate character and whatnot. There was
I
a
only
scene,
watch it as a joke a few times.
There was this Putin-like character, and he even said, come on, my administration has gay people in it. One of the guys closest to me is gay. It's just our people are not cool with it. They're conservative, so we just don't kind of put it out there. But it was kind of one of those things that you're kind of just this false narrative that you're pushing right now because your people are so concerned about it, even though we're talking about friggin' war and they want to push their ideologies on other countries. And we said this in Nicaragua. There was somebody who was kind of talking to an executive over there saying, well, I wish you guys were a lot more, cool towards gay people, lesbians and stuff. And they're like, dude, these are very Christian religious people there. Give them time to get this.
How much money
Don't
do you
push
have?
your values on us, right?
How rich are you that you even have time to care about what Uganda says when meanwhile the biggest eco-terrorism just happened from your own goddamn country?
Yeah. We
screwed up all of Africa. That, in case anybody's wondering why they're flying Russian flags in those countries, that's our fault. no knowledge of anything except the one Lady Gaga thing you were told to moo like a cow about.
Yeah.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois, Indianapolis, and Levittown, New York. Wow, that's a lot of dates. See you there.